Ah, where do I begin? Oftentimes, love is a pretty tricky one. It's something that we kind of struggle to work with. It's something that we are constantly surrounded with, but we tend to forget because we try to control it. We try to control all of the expectations that we have on ourselves. We try to control the kind of circumstances that kind of surround love. And sometimes you might have to ask yourself if this is for, because for a lot of you guys, it probably would be, love for another person. Is it really love, or is it really control? And is that really genuine? So let's talk about it. Playing Valorant today. Something different than my usual videos, and voicing over this, so trying something new. On that note, love. Let's try and take out the kind of, how should I say, the insecurities of love, and rather building a kind of soul where you kind of feel whole. You feel like you're with that kind of peace, that unity, that essentially, which a lot of you guys might guess, Christ consciousness. Now, it doesn't have to be that. It can be anything. But we're just talking about pretty much unconditional love. And not just that, but the different kind of forms of love you could pretty much have. The differences between them, and the kind of fears that kind of take over sometimes, that kind of blocks you from love. Because the real thing is being in balance or being imbalanced. Try not to think of it as a thing of, you're unloved, because you're not. The fact that you're here in this video today, it pretty much shows that you are loved. Loved enough to exist. And you might not believe it, but you are. You're able to be, the air is giving you air, you're able to drink water if you are, food, whatever you may have. You even have the internet. That's pretty crazy. So be grateful for what you got. And unconditional love is basically it's the opposite of conditional love. So conditional love is, again, conditions based on love itself. So you might be thinking, I can love this person or love that person if they provide this and that. That's more of a contract rather than love. That's not really love by itself. And so unconditional love is loving without expectations, being kind without expectations. And achieving this kind of state of mind is something that is super duper important, because it not only kind of detaches you from, the material world in a sense, but you just live and you're so fulfilled and you're thriving all the time. You're like a beacon of light in a sense. You're able to help others, you're able to help yourself. You have that glow, you have that aura about you. And I probably covered this in a video because, how you got all the red pills, the black pills and all that stuff. And I feel like a lot of people don't really talk about how much of a difference that sort of internal love makes on not even your psyche, maybe your appearance too, the way you kind of go about your day and the way that you operate in general. Power of self-love is pretty much what really gets you in a healthy relationship as well, because that's pretty much what a lot of people are going to be here for. They're going to be here for the relationship side of the love, which I completely get. A lot of people tend to fall into the trap of trying to fill in the void in their heart through love, and again, through conditional love. So when you are unconditional, you don't need to rely on anyone. And from that, bringing that together with another person, it's like there's a whole sort of new realm of existence. Life operates in a much more holistic manner, a much more genuine manner, where you don't have to really worry about anything to do with yourself or the other person, and you're in flow. Flow is a very, very important thing, and it does operate in love too, at least in my opinion. Just sipping my tea if you can hear that. So we've got some I think it's valerian tea, which is pretty good in the evening to have if you want to relax. It's a little side note. You also want people that kind of nurture and support you as well, because it's pretty much a lot easier to be in a state of love when your environment is like that. Again, we shouldn't really fall into the trap of relying on other people for happiness. However, your environment does definitely play a big factor. I don't want you to kind of focus on changing your environment, because again, at some cases you can't really. All you can change is your internal state of mind, your internal state of being, your heart essentially, how pure it is. But the importance of positive kind of relationships in our lives it's really, really important. Because when you're obviously in that kind of surrounding, which many people might not have, or at least maybe you might even have it, but you just don't realize it because maybe you have some trauma built up, maybe you have some fears built up that kind of blocks you from seeing that. There's a lot of different cases, so it's going to be very, very individual. But appreciating the love and support of others, even if it's not in their best intention to harm you or anything like that, because at the end of the day, we're all humans. We're all kind of doing our best in life in our own way. Whether or not people treat you badly, whether or not things happen. And that shouldn't it shouldn't stay with you for very long, especially if you treat it with such a negative association. You know, there's a very, very big thing on forgiveness and being able to move on, because at the end of the day, you matter too. And when you kind of let other people and situations and kind of environments control you, it kind of becomes a thing of they hold power over you, or the situation holds power over you if it's that. And so you're giving power to something other than yourself, which is not love. So it's very important for those of you who are going through those kind of things as well, to really, really appreciate certain lessons and certain things that might be, it might have hurt, but at the end of the day, it made you into who you are today. So you kind of need to go through some of these things. It's not always going to be, happy and this and that, otherwise there'd be no experience to have. Sometimes you have to have painful experiences in order to experience pleasurable experiences. And so when you get over this, not only can you treat yourself better, and you're experiencing life with a lot more joy and bliss every single day, but you can spread that out to the world as well. Maybe we can create a better world through that. If a lot of people got over their fears and traumas and stuff like that, from, again, if we're talking about love in a relationship sense, maybe a partner that might have done something wrong, or at least you might have thought that they've done something wrong. It's always learning lessons, and it's not only always learning lessons, but it also gives you a reminder to treat yourself kindly, to essentially be whole. And I want to keep going back to this kind of be whole point, because a lot of people don't have it, which you could argue that it comes from the ego not feeling whole, and the desire to not be whole means that you can improve because you've got some kind of reason to improve. Otherwise, if you felt whole, you might not have a reason to live with love, right? So I completely get it. I'm not telling you to completely get that away, but there's a manner in which you should handle things where you can kind of do things a lot more, again, holistically, a lot more healthy, in a manner where you can kind of not only have control over the situation that is your mind, but also how you handle certain things. And I think that is very, very important to have. And again, from this, you pretty much you maintain healthy relationships, and you create a better world, not only through, again, yourself, but everyone around you, your friends, your family, maybe your peers, maybe even a stranger. Maybe a stranger has a lot of malice in their heart, and you leading with love can actually help fix it. It's not your thing to fix, obviously, but maybe it can also brighten up someone's day, leading to a domino effect. And then maybe we can have a world where we all nurture and support each other, despite, some days when we feel weak, other people might be strong, and vice versa. We can always help each other in those kind of situations to kind of remind us of who we are and the kind of values that we should live in. Because I'm not gonna lie, in a day-to-day life, like how it is nowadays, a lot of people are pretty crazy. Or at least it's portrayed to be in the media and all of that stuff. I still think a lot of people under all of that have, a really beautiful soul and beautiful hearts, but it's just that, again, a lot of times they don't get to let themselves experience that because of all the kind of stubbornness that they have in their brains, and they're not in flow. They're not in flow of unconditional love, or love for the planet, or love for themselves. So if you are someone that has been obviously treated badly, or you see people that treat other people badly, it comes from a place not in love, and more in suffering, and more in fear. So sometimes you have to kind of, I don't want to say feel sorry for them, but it kind of is like that. Which is kind of sad, because if that's how they're treating other people, that's how they're going to be treating themselves. And that's not what we want, especially with you, the viewer. And I guess you could say unconditional love might kind of link to divine love, if you want to believe in, a divine power. I'm not here to argue that, but this is for the people who do believe in such a higher power and a higher kind of presence. Or maybe you might believe that it's in yourself. I'll cover this in a different video, because there's different ways to go about life in terms of self-empowerment. Some people find it through an external source. Some people find it through themselves. It always is pretty much different, but either way, the end result is self-confidence and self-esteem. So you want to play into what kind of makes the most amount of sense to you. Anyway, so you might consider this divine love, God. You might consider it source. You might consider it the universe, or you might consider it yourself. The concept of divine love is something that is pretty crazy. You're surrounded by so many things that keeps you alive. And if that isn't love, then I don't know what is. Because the ground is supporting you. And again, like I said before, you have so many different things available to you in any kind of regard. Sometimes you might not have as much as other people. Yeah, that's understandable. Sometimes you can get frustrated from that, but we also have things that someone else doesn't have around the world. It's all about how your cards are dealt, in a sense. Someone might have the jack, someone might have the king, you might just have an 8. But regardless of that, sometimes there's that extra bit of love, whether or not it's created from the mind, thinking that there is a higher power, or a spiritual source, or your higher self, or whatever you want to call it. Connecting with this, and a lot of people who do connect with this often have a sense of peace, a sense of joy, a sense of bliss. They have a form of divine connection, and obviously when you think of having a divine connection, what are you thinking about? Those kind of higher up feelings. You're not going to think about a higher power that's going to be stuck in fear or sadness or grief or anger, right? So it's really important to kind of have that sort of experience for the people that do. And obviously the idea of self-love as a form of divine connection is really important to have, because if you know that you're going to be supported by this external power, then you are loved by this external power. You, again, are given another chance at life from this external power, if that's what you want to believe in. And that's really, really important to have. When I say it's really important, I'm talking like super, super important. It just depends on whatever makes you feel that kind of way, whatever you're sort of more geared towards. Because there's always going to be different ways to get to the same endpoint. It's just about what works for you. And so for other people, they might think of that divine love as something that keeps them going, something that gives them hope. A kind of, like a friend to kind of lean back on. You have that constant support given to you. And it might not be in a material sense, but in a spiritual sense, it's there. And you should feel welcomed by that if you are someone that is, I guess, but a believer of that. And to be honest, love is a journey. It really is a journey, man. It's not something that is instant. Not everyone has it straight away. You can have maybe the best childhoods and stuff like that, where you didn't have to go through as much trauma or a lack of love and things like that. That's understandable, but again, there's always going to be different struggles in different kind of ways for people. You know, you're just as strong as your surroundings and what your life experiences have been. That's just how it is. So it's a journey. Not everyone comes out of the womb completely fulfilled, you know. We're here to learn to, again, experience the human experience in a sense, right? Like, you have all of the sort of continuous process of growth and discovery with yourself and with others, for some people that are, you know, like, you take care of other people. So it's really important to kind of have that level of patience, that level of self-compassion to really love fully. And again, with yourself and the world, because when it starts with yourself, only then can you expand it into the world. It's never the other way around, because how can you truly lead by example if you're not going to lead within yourself, within the gateways and the garden of your mind? And heart. I mention heart because I feel like the heart might have its own kind of feeling compared to the brain. Because the brain is pretty logical. The heart is more like, you know, creative. It's more like out there. It's like a different kind of experience, right? It governs your emotions, so it's really important. At least I'd like to think of it like that way. I think it simplifies the sort of process with the mind-heart connection and unification, which, if you want to Google, it's a pretty interesting thing. It's just basically about how your heart and mind are in sync and how it can basically lead to a more fulfilling life. Because you're going to be in sync and in flow. But if that doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you. Whatever the way that works for you, it's what works for you. As simple as that might sound, it's what we need sometimes. But I tend to see a lot of people as well, they sort of fear love. They're always scared. Even if you mention the word love, like, you've got so many, how much music have we got out there that is really, really famous that talks about love in a relationship sense, by the way, now, where they kind of get rejected, maybe they might get abandoned, maybe they're scared to be vulnerable because someone let them down before, or whatever the case may be. It's really important to overwhelm these fears if you really, truly want to experience love in its purest form. And that's the thing, that's going to be one of the hardest things to do if you're someone that has experienced any of those things. You have to also understand that everything is thought, right? Which might sound very complicated, so if you guys want, I could also explain that in a different video, but your mind really does govern pretty much everything that exists. So when you kind of think in a very insecure state where you put yourself in a position where you get rejected, where you put yourself in a position to get abandoned, or even scared of being vulnerable, oftentimes it could just be a manifestation of your own mind. I'm not saying in all cases, because again, when you're talking about relationships, it also includes another party, it also includes the external environment. But it's really, really, really important to kind of keep a kind of a level of love where if you do find yourself in those situations, you could always just get over it quicker. You could also move on quicker. You could always just become a better person. And that's why I say love is a journey, because you're going to go through a lot of these times where, And it will happen across different years. It will happen across different stages of your life where you kind of go through different things. Because again, not all of us have the memory where we can just say, you know what, we know what it's like to live at some kind of age. We're all experiencing this, right? And so that's why it's a continuous journey of just, again, learning more about yourself, learning about what kind of gets you going, what doesn't get you going, how certain triggers might get to you, how you might just not be leading with love. It may be this whole time you might have been leading with fear. Maybe you've been, again, scared. And sometimes, a lot of times, because we're so kind of programmed to make this normal, it's not normal to live like this. It's not normal to live with stress, really bad stress management. It's not really good to lead with, like a broken heart, for example. It's not. We're meant to live in that kind of peace, that unity, that sort of that good feeling. And obviously you're going to have the hard days and the sort of lessons to learn, but ultimately we should all be living in that kind of state where we lead with love. And that can pretty much heal all of your past wounds, all of the traumas inside of you, once you accept it. Once you accept it into your life and accept that it's normal to have it. A lot of times, like I said, we tend to reject love because we feel like we're not deserving of it. Maybe you might even be the person that likes to give too much, but you don't like to take. And there is a very important and like kind of ability, I don't want to say to be selfish because it's not really selfish, but it's more of a thing of, because we radiate love and sort of that good feeling outwards, we should there's no issue in us also kind of expecting it in return, sort of thing. It's not really like a selfish thing, it's just an exchange, in a sense, an exchange of energy, exchange of, more people being positive together makes a bigger impact. And so, as a result, you can lead with love. Also, on the topic of like traumas and wounds and stuff like that, the power of self-love in pretty much emotional healing is huge. Because a lot of people don't realize that oftentimes when they feel really tired or burnt out and stuff like that, it could just be because they have so much kind of weighed down upon them. Their heart feels heavy, or they don't know how to process their emotions very well. And that's why love and accepting of love in every kind of stage is super, super, super important. And to be honest, I mean, in a sense as well, I guess you could also argue, I don't want to say argue, but yeah, you could also say that pretty much love and purpose is kind of interlinked as well. Because when you're kind of leading your life without being insecure, without kind of leading someone else's life and someone else's dreams and ambitions, or at least what every single other person around you is doing, you start to find your own life purpose. You start to live for what really matters, and that's you. You are the kind of main character of your own movie, I guess. It doesn't have to be what's socially acceptable or what's, deemed as whatever, because that's not genuine. That's going to be more on the basis of conditional love. But when you radiate that kind of unconditional love and that sort of genuine sort of ability to be yourself, that's when you really start to find your own life purpose. That's when you start to connect to yourself more. You start spending time with yourself, you start spending time with your mind and your heart, and you start to, again, that kind of self-awareness. It really kind of leads you in a life that sort of makes things a lot smoother. You start to lead a more fulfilled and happy life. And sometimes it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of, maybe for some people, for other people, maybe even sometimes really, really situations where they might feel like they were really distraught. But what's on the other side of it? Growth, progress, a more fulfilled life. And pretty much as a result, it can kind of obviously inspire, motivate you, and then you know how you got motivation all the time and all these motivational videos and music that you might use. When you lead with love, you're leading with so much purpose that you don't need any of that stuff. It's just like routine. It's just mandatory. It's just, you know what you need to do. You know how you need to help the world and benefit the world in any kind of way. You know how to lead value and provide actual things that matter in the world. Things that will actually help out other people. Things that will sort of create more kind of things for the world. You know, it could be anything. It could be business. It could be maybe entertainment. It could be music. It could be even just smiling at someone in public, maybe. It could be anything. So that's why it's really, really important to have, because again, you're kind of here to do what you are, I don't want to say meant to do, because again, it's entirely your choice on what you do, but you're in more of a flow with what you kind of want to do inside, internally, if you will. And that was a pretty crazy kill. I got in the 12th round? No, sorry, the 19th round, the 20th round, I don't know, the 21st round. My maths isn't the greatest, but yeah, I appreciate you guys for watching. Stay tuned to the channel. Let me know if you guys like this kind of style of video, because it's me recording, pre-recording actually, and then me talking now. So it could give me some more time to think, more time to talk. I don't have to chop up the gameplay in any kind of way, because it's just there, and I can just watch it in the background and just talk. But yeah, I thought I'd do Valorant today because I have been playing quite a bit recently. I don't know why, but I originally played this game, I think it was like during like 2020 or 2021 for a little bit. Then I stopped, and then I don't know, it's really been hitting recently. I'm not the greatest at this game, but yeah, this is right to play. I think bronze 2 or 1, one of those ranks. Not the highest, obviously, as you can tell from the gameplay. But it's a good game. It really is a good game. And it's a really chill game. The only thing I would say is that there are sometimes too many rounds, but it is what it is, right? At the end of the day. But yeah, man, I feel like a lot of people don't really, like, when they think of love, they just think of love in a very external matter, you know, love for just a partner. And maybe I'll cover a video on relationships too, maybe one day, if you guys want me to cover that. Which is, again, it's going to be pretty much the basis of how you need to look after yourself more. But yeah, I don't know, man. Love is it's a really tricky one, man, because obviously we live in a very, very competitive world, so that kind of unconditional love isn't going to be fully there, because most things on the planet are going to be conditional, especially when you want something that's nurturing, just like more of an exchange of, you know, like for like kind of thing. So, but I still think we can always achieve a planet where we can always be kind without expectation, and then providing just a better place for everyone to live on. I think a lot of the toxicity that we see in the world, I don't want to say it comes from insecurity, but there are a lot of things where it kind of comes from that isn't exactly the best. It's not really the best at all, man. So I would like to ask you guys, as the viewer, to just maybe find a way that you can, or at least try to find a way where you can spend a little bit more time with yourself, where you can spend some more time just to enjoy the simplicities of life. And I know that might sound really kind of cliche considering we're playing a game, which is pretty complicated, but sometimes we just need to take the time to really just chill out and really just spend time in that sort of that loving feeling where you feel nurtured, you feel supported and stuff like that. And you actually find that you might actually have more energy throughout the day. You might find that you sleep better, knowing that you're happy. And sleep is going to be another thing that is super important when it comes to this stuff, because when you're sleeping in a more kind of happy and loving state, not only is your sleep quality going to be improved because you're sort of going to bed with a good kind of mindset, but the way you kind of operate in the next day probably will be very much heightened as well. So keep that in mind when you are going to bed. Sometimes we'll watch a few bits of content before we go to bed and all that stuff. And a lot of it might not be the most, how do I say, the most productive. And so it will kind of leave us feeling in a sense where we are in more of a state of fear rather than love. So maybe keep a journal, maybe, you know, just listen to some nice music that gets you happy. Maybe listen to someone that sort of, you know, speaks pretty well. Whatever the case might be, right? But yeah, I think that's all I got for today. I appreciate you guys for listening, and if you stayed for this long. And stay blessed, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next one.